Okay, so we're looking at week 5's additional practice activity. And the first question here we have is about the price of paraffin, which is fluctuating, and they give us the price as so many cents per litre. They want us to write down the cost in rands of 1 litre of paraffin. So this is just a straight conversion question. You're just changing cents into rands. And to do that, you're dividing by 100. So 764,59 divided by 100, because there's 100 cents in a rand, gives you 7 rand, 6459. And remember, you always show it unrounded first, and you can then say approximately rand 7,65. Then they want you to determine the cost to the nearest rands of 12,5 litres of paraffin. So if you know the price of 1, you're just going to say 7,6459 times by 12 litres. And that will get you to 956,6. And there's some cents there, but they want it to the nearest rand. So then you say, well, that is approximately 96 rand as your final answer. Then we've got question 2, which is an electricity tariff. They've got there that it can be purchased in 2 different ways, prepaid or postpaid. And the first thing they want is the fixed cost for the prepaid system. So that you just look, fixed monthly cost, 200 rand. The second question there is asking about the Smith household with 3 people, and they tell us they use 349,9 kilowatt hours of electricity. And they want to know the cost without VAT. So the fact that they're saying that they want it excluding VAT, we need to go and check, does the price include or exclude VAT? And it tells us in the table there it's without VAT. So that means you don't actually have to do anything with the question there regarding the VAT. Now we need to go and look at our brackets to work out the cost of this. So our first bracket is 0 to 50. So we're just going to say, well, that's times by 50 because we're using the whole bracket. Our next bracket is 50 to 350. But we only have 349,9 kilowatt hours. So we need to know, well, 349,9 kilowatts minus the 50 we already paid for in the bracket above it. Okay. And then, which will give us 299,9 if you do that on a calculator. And then when you calculate that out, your first bracket is 34.50, and your second bracket is going to be 249,919. 249,919. And then all we're going to do is we're going to total them together. We're going to say that the 34.50 plus the 249,919, which is going to give us 277,419. Then, because remembering it is money, and we always round money to 2 decimal places, you would say that is approximately equal to rands 277,42. And that should be your final answer. Right. The next question talks about Mr. Smith, who worked out that when his daughter goes to university, her bill will be two-thirds of the amount calculated above. Verify showing all calculations if the assumption is correct. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to work out what is 2/3 of our previous calculation. So let me get this on a new page. Okay, so we're going to need to go firstly, what is 2/3 of being times 277,42. And you can just do it exactly like that in your calculator. You could also say divide it by 3 and then multiply by 2. That's also fine if you did it that way. You should get to 184,95. Okay, so that's how much they believe it will be. Then you're probably sitting wondering, but now how do we verify this and why do we bother? Because it's 2/3 of a person. It comes from that understanding of tariffs don't work exactly the same as if we were just paying one price for the electricity. So let's recalculate it now and see if it actually does come out or not. So all we're going to do is recalculate the cost of the kilowatts, but obviously we're not going to recalculate the cost of all 349.9 kilowatts. We need to first work out, well, what is 2/3 of the kilowatts that they use as well, or the 349.9 kilowatts. And if you do that, you'll get to 233.27 kilowatt hours. So the question that we're really asking is, does the cost of this 233.27 kilowatt hours equate to our 184.95? And the only way we can test that is to go back to our bracket and to recalculate it. So the first part of our bracket was 69 cents, so 0.69 times by 50. And then the second part of our bracket was 81 cents, so 0.81 times by the remaining part of our kilowatts, which would be 183.27. So 183.27. And if you don't see where that comes from, that's coming from me going 233.27 minus the 50 I've already paid for. Right? When you calculate those out, let me actually write in the values for you. The 69 is going to give me the 34. It's the same 34.50 as we had before. And then the 81 cents is going to give us a total of 148.50. Sorry, not 50, 45. And then when you add those together, we're going to get to 182.948, or 95 I should say, because we use the round values. So we can see here when we look at it that if we compare the cost when we calculate it versus just the 2/3 of the price, it actually doesn't equate to exactly the same amount. So firstly, we need to say, because they said verify showing all calculations if the assumption is correct, we need to say, therefore, the assumption is incorrect. Because remember, you must have that statement when you're answering a question that says verify in it. And the reason being, because it's a sliding scales you can't just divide directly. You actually have to recalculate for each value that you're working with. So we can see here quite clearly the difference between them, and therefore the assumption is incorrect. Right, question 4.3, we have a story about Trevor, who's a plumber, and he earns a taxable income of 126,500 Rand for the year of 2021. The first thing they ask us is, does he meet the tax threshold requirements? Explain what this means. So we need to go and look at our tax threshold, which was over there, 2021. And if we look at 2021 over here, we can see, given his age, he is actually not meeting the tax threshold because he was over 65. So does he meet the tax threshold? No, because he is earning less. He's only earning 126 and he needed 128 to be eligible for tax. So therefore, is he correct in saying he should not have to pay tax? Or does he meet the tax requirement? No, he did not. Therefore, he does not have to pay tax. Right. Then they ask, what information is needed to determine a person's rebates? Well, rebates are based on age, so you need to know the person's age. That's the only thing you really need to know, because that will tell you which rebate they get. Right. So 4.3.3, we've got all about Mr. Naidu. We're told he's 72 years old, so that already tells us second rebate. We know his taxable income per month, and then he claims that more than a quarter of his annual taxable income is paid to SARS. They want us to verify this. So to do this, we need to first figure out, well, what is he going to pay to SARS? So if I look and I see, okay, firstly it's 55,250. This is per month. And we know we can't work monthly figures with a tax table. So we need to multiply it by 12 to get us to an annual figure. And that is 663,000. So 663,000 Rand. And that's what we're going to now go to our tax table. Now if I go to my tax table and I look for where that's going to fit in, it's going to fit into this bracket over here, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th bracket down. And then we're going to calculate with it. So I go 163,335, that's coming from my formula, plus 39%, so 39% of, and then I need to work out what my taxable income is above the 613, so 663 minus the 613, 600. Okay, when we do that and we calculate it out, firstly we're just going to do the 163,335 plus the 39%. So I'm going to write it as 0.39. It's up to you how you write it. Times by 49,400. And we kind of keep calculating 163,335 plus, and that'll give me 19,266. And when you add that together, we're going to get to 182,601. All right, so that's the start of our tax. Now we know the next thing that comes off is our rebates, and he was 72 years old. So remember, 72 years old, he is going to get 2 rebates coming off. Also, because our rebate table has lots of different tax years in it, we need to make sure we're using the right year. And they did tell us it was in the 2020 second year. So I'm going to go to my rebate now, and I'm going to take my 182,601 and subtract the primary, which was the 15,714. And I'm also going to take off my secondary, which was 8613. And when you do that, you get to a total of 158,274. So that is now his annual tax. Now, there's a few ways that we can work out whether this is a quarter of his salary, because remember the question was, is this a quarter of his taxable income? So one option is to see, well, what fraction is the 158? So I can say, well, this out of, what was it, 663, put it as a fraction over 100, and get what percentage that will give me. It'll give me 23.87%. And we can say, well, if we know that, that's not a quarter of his income. A quarter of his income would be 25%. So therefore, he is incorrect. Okay. The other way you could do it is you could say, well, what is a quarter of 663? And just for the sake of showing it, I would say, what is 1/4 of 663? So a quarter of his income. Work out how much does it actually get me. It'll get me to 165,750. And then we can say, well, we can see that the total tax, the 158, is less, and therefore it's incorrect. Okay. Both methods are legitimate. You can pick which one kind of made sense to you. All right. Then we had this graph, another question 4.1. And they want us firstly to determine the difference in income between Los Angeles West and the people living in the Boston East area. So all you have to do is go to the Los Angeles West. It gives you the figures at the bottom, and the Boston East, and the question was about income, so we're just going to subtract the two. And if you go 63,343 minus 59,234, you will get to 4109. And that would just be the difference in income between the two figures. All right. The next question asks us which city had the lowest expenses. So again, you just look at your graph and we're going to see who had the lowest. And I would honestly suggest you look at the values before you look at the graph itself, because if they're giving you the values, it'll make sure you have the most accurate answer. And the one that has the lowest is Chicago East. So you just say Chicago East. Then they say determine the implications of expenses exceeding income. I don't actually like the word determine. I would rather say explain the implications of expenses exceeding income. But determine is more suggesting calculation. You don't actually have to calculate in this. You just have to talk about what would be the implications. So the implications would be there is a shortfall. This one, you can say there's a shortfall. This would suggest that people are going into debt, you could say. So that city most likely has quite a high debt ratio. Something to this effect. You're needing to be commenting on the fact that people are not able to afford. You could also suggest here poverty would be the other part of it, because the people in the city are struggling to afford their expenses. Okay. Then, would an increase in salary have an impact on tax payments? Explain your answer. Well, yes, it would, because if people's salaries increase, taxes will also increase as well. So the higher the salary people in the city earn, the more the taxes they can get as well. Then they said the percentage difference between income and expenses of people living in Chicago East. So we need to go and look at our values for Chicago East. There they are. And the percentage of difference between the two is our percentage change formula. So 49213 minus 48021. And we're going to put it over 48021 times 100. And it'll get you to 2.48%. Right. And that's all you had to do for that one, the percentage of change between the two. So that's the end of week 5's activities. Please chat to your math lit teacher if there's anything you're not sure about from this.